Hello and welcome to the grounds crew. My name is Alex,
And this is Paul.
and we are finally getting back to some college football. It's been a while since we've done a video on this, and we are going to go over the bowl games and the college football playoffs that have happened. Paul, take it away.
All right. It's going to seem like we're going way back because we are.
Just a little bit.
We're, yeah, going way back to December 14th was the beginning of the bowl games. And I'm not going to go over every bowl, obviously, or we would be here for a long time. But I do want to just bring out some highlights of some of the things that happened on a few of those fun ones. One of the fun things that happened on December 14th was South Alabama beat Western Michigan. And the reason why that's a big one is because then South Alabama teased that they were the only Alabama team that beat a Michigan team.
Oh no.
And it became a big deal because, of course, Alabama lost to Michigan later, and so this became a big thing that South Alabama beat Western Michigan. By the way, this was a much less as far as ranked teams, but yet the score was 30-23, so it was a very good game. But it was just a fun thing to have South Alabama be able to sort of rub it in the face of Alabama later that they won and they were the only team in Alabama that beat a Michigan team. So, and another on Tuesday the 17th, another game that again wouldn't necessarily mean a whole lot, but yet an amazing game. Memphis and West Virginia played 42-37. The reason I'm bringing up some of these because as we come closer to some of the ones that should have meant something, some of those became blowouts and weren't that great of games. And these were, quote, lesser games that maybe people didn't watch, but yet were great games. And so I only say that because coming up to next year, you might want to keep that in mind. That if you want to watch sometimes a good game, you don't necessarily just watch the ones that are considered the great games. Um, I mean, this one's called the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, for instance. That doesn't even sound that delightful, but yet here it is, 42-37. That's a fantastic game. And that was on Tuesday, December 17th, probably the only game of that day. And so, again, it's something you could have watched and had a good time with watching it. I'm only going to mention Wednesday's game because it was here in Boca Raton. Boca Raton is a bowl that is right here, right next to me. I mean, I could be there in less than 45 minutes, and I didn't go to it, obviously, but it really is a neat thing that they play. I don't know either one of those teams at all. I don't know anything about them, but it was James Madison and Western Kentucky, and that would have been a good game, 27-17. That's a great score.
Yeah.
But all right, let's continue on. We're already to December 19th. And again, that game ended up really, really good. Sam Houston against Georgia Southern. Sam Houston 31, Georgia Southern 26. And again, even though these games don't mean anything, just look at those scores and look at how close they are. Um, Now, we jump down and now we can go clear down to, well, let's go to December 24th because now we're getting closer to Christmas. And that one is a Hawaii Bowl. And I bring this one up simply because of two reasons. First of all, it's South Florida playing.
Mm-hmm.
But this game also had five overtimes.
That's a good game.
That's a good game. Okay, this is South Florida against San Jose State, and it ends up 41-39. That especially when you consider a lot of people have off, so a lot of people are watching a game like this. That is a very good game. And then there was football, of course, of NFL on uh, Wednesday for the 25th, and then the 26th you have another one that ends up amazing game,
Yeah, you thought
and
five
that
overtimes was enough. They
yeah,
needed
really
six.
that day it's Toledo against Pittsburgh, and it's 48-46 for a final with Toledo winning six overtimes. Wow. I mean, now you're getting into some serious overtimes. So just that day, the 26th, you have that game. Then you have Kansas State against Rutgers, 44-41. Then you have Arkansas State against Bowling Green, 38-31. So here's three bowls that don't necessarily mean much. Okay, these teams aren't really great teams, but some amazing bowls. And I really want to help people understand that some of these lesser bowls that we don't think a lot about really end up being some amazing bowls. And every now and then you get a blowout. I mean, Friday the 27th, you had Syracuse beat Washington State 52-35. So that's not fun. Nobody wants to watch one like that. But even on that day, you had some very close ones. Navy and Oklahoma. Navy won 21-20. Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, 35-27. So some very good, tight, awesome games to think about. Um, and I really like it. Looks to me like what this says to me is that some of these teams deserve to be there and they deserve to play each other when you've got nice tight teams like that going on, because that's the way it should be. You should have nice tight teams by the time you get to bowls. There are so many bowls that it's easy to get lost in the mix of who's who and do they deserve to be there and should they be there and all that type of stuff, that it's easy to get lost in the mix of who's who and why are they there. As you get closer to the first, the bowls are supposed to mean something.
Hmm.
They're supposed to be deeper. They're supposed to be ranked teams. So as we get closer, I want to go ahead and mention all of them simply because of how important they're supposed to be. So I will start with, let's see, let's go Saturday, December 28th, and I'll start to mention all of those. Um, I'm not going to mention necessarily where they're at unless it's a big deal. For instance, that day you had one at Fenway Park, which is pretty cool. It was UConn and North Carolina. UConn won 27-14. That same day, they also had one in New York Stadium, Pinstripe Bowl, it's called. And there was Nebraska and Boston College. I just found it interesting that Boston College didn't play at Fenway. I don't know
Hmm.
why they didn't fit that one different, but anyway, it's okay. But Nebraska and Boston College is 20-15.
And
Nebraska
that was
won.
the bad boy mowers pinstripe bowl.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta love some of the names of these things. It's really something.
Pop Tarts bowl is coming up.
Yeah, yeah. Here's one of these blowout type games. TCU and Louisiana, 34-3. TCU won. That's not looking pretty. That's not a good game. Yeah, the one he just mentioned is the Pop Tart Bowl. Was Iowa State against Miami. I would just love to know if that means that every fan got a Pop Tart, and if every player gets like a box of Pop Tart. I just wonder what all that means. Pop
MVP of the
Tart.
game gets a
Yeah,
Pop
yeah,
Tart.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Gets a month's worth of Pop Tarts or something. I don't know, but anyway, great game though. Iowa State won over Miami, 42-41. Um, how this one even becomes something? Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl. Are we serious right now? Um,
It's the Do double G. What are you talking about?
that just amazes me. Uh, Miami of Ohio and Colorado State. Miami of Ohio won 43-17. Wow, Snoop Dogg. I mean, seriously,
He's just
you know,
completing side missions at this point.
absolutely unbelievable. I mean, that he's have to end up in jail here soon, and here he
Oh,
is with a bowl. That's pretty amazing. All right, next one is East Carolina and North Carolina State. Wow, you talk about like a rival right there. 26-21, East Carolina wins. Fantastic. BYU and Colorado. This one shocked me. Colorado's been a pretty big powerhouse. A lot of talk
mm.
with Deion Sanders, what he's doing here on the offseason. Is he going pro as a coach, or is he going to stay with
Well, he's not going
Colorado?
to Dallas.
He's not going to Dallas, that's evident. I would say since he's not going there, he's probably going to stay with Colorado, my personal
Yeah.
opinion. But anyway, BYU won big 34-14 in that game.
Hey,
Um,
remember the Alamo,
yes, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
the Valero Alamo Bowl.
And another blowout that day was Army Louisiana Tech. Army beat Louisiana Tech 27-6. As we get closer, Monday, December 30th, Missouri and Iowa. This is the Music City Bowl. Missouri won 27-24. Fantastic game there. And then we get to Tuesday, December 31st. And this is when Michigan beat Alabama, and that was 19-13. And yeah, cheers abundant. And I love this one. Tony the Tiger, Sun Bowl, Louisville and Washington. Listen to this one. 35-34. What a game. Wow. And same day, Illinois and South Carolina, 21-17.
I could
Those
go
are
for
some
some cheese. It's right about now.
yeah, those are some tight games. I like those kind of games. Those are cool. And then LSU and Baylor, 44-31. That same day, LSU won. January 2nd, Old Miss and Duke. Old Miss won 52-20. A little bit of a blowout there. January 3rd. And don't be alarmed, people. We are going to go back to those playoff games, okay, here
Yes.
in just a moment. But January 3rd, Texas State and North Texas. This would be another sort of in-state rival type game. 30-28. Texas State wins. Wow, what a game! 30-28. Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl. Oh my goodness. I have lived in places of the US that if it's not Duke mayonnaise, you better not even use it. I'm serious. I mean, it's like, if it's not Duke's mayonnaise, you better not even have mayonnaise.
They're
January
right there.
3rd,
Wait, there's places in the world that's racist against the other type of mayonnaise.
you better believe it. Yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah, I'm serious. I've lived in those places. Minnesota and Virginia Tech. Minnesota wins 24-10. Um, This one was on my birthday, Saturday, January 4th, in the Bahamas. I mean, can you beat that? But Liberty has been a really good team this year, and
Hmm.
they got blown away. Buffalo and Liberty. Buffalo won 26-7. That was a shocker. I did not expect that score, and so I was really shocked by that one. Now I want to go back, and this is actually going to take us to a different screen because I need to go to the bracket. The brackets were quite interesting this year because this was the first time that they went to a 12 bracket, a 12 team bracket. And that was a great idea. But one thing that you got to remember whenever you come up with a new idea, there's always going to be some chink in the armor. And how's it going to
Hmm.
go? And is this going to be okay? And somebody's going to be upset, and somebody's going to get bumped. And
When is anyone never upset?
well, that's right. I mean, here's the thing. If you come up with 12, then 13 is going to be upset. If you would have come up with 15 teams, 16 is going to be upset. So it doesn't matter what number you come up with, there's always going to be someone that's upset because there's going to be that next number. And so anyway, it was a big debate who number 12 was supposed to be. And then I do like that they did play sort of like they do in the college basketball, that they played 12 and 5, 9 and 8, so forth. And that's how they did it. They did have people that had bye weeks, and we'll talk about that in just a minute too. But this first round was Clemson and Texas that played. Even though Texas was the higher seed, really did expect Clemson to win. They did not. They lost to Texas 38-24, and then that same week, Tennessee and Ohio State won. Tennessee and Ohio State played again. Ohio State was just ranked number 8, Tennessee ninth. People expected that to be a much better game than it ended up. Ohio State won pretty commandingly, 42-17. And then that same week, Penn State and SMU played. SMU was a fairly new team to even be uh, ranked of any sort, so people didn't know how this game was going to go, and it ended up a pretty good blowout. Penn State won 38-10. The team that the game that was closer and nobody knew how this game was going to go because Indiana had not really been tested very much this year. Notre Dame. This was actually this was an in-state thing. Notre Dame is also from Indiana, and by the way, this was very cold. I don't remember what the dates were, but this very very cold weather up there this day.
December 20th and 21st was the first round.
Okay, okay, it was very cold. So Notre Dame was ranked 7th, Indiana was ranked 10th, and Notre Dame won by 10 points, 27-17. There were some teams there that had buys that week because of how good they had done before, but that was the first round. And so then that brought it down into um, the next level and who was going to play. And so the winners of those played the ones that were bye week.
Hmm.
Now that took us into the next week's. Now, by the way, some of these would be considered bowl games too, because um, they sort of combined this year, and they'll continue to do that, the idea of bowls with the championship at the same time. So, for instance, the one I'm getting ready to talk about was the Peach Bowl. So, even though we did the bowls before, this is the bracket stuff. This is the ranked teams that we're talking about now. So you ended up with Texas and Arizona State playing. Texas was ranked fifth. Arizona State was ranked fourth. Again, Texas had had a little bit harder schedule throughout the year, and it ended up being a great game, 39-31, and Texas did win that game. The game that people were just not sure how it was going to end up. They really thought that this was going to be the testing ground for Ohio State. There was a lot of talk at this point that if Ohio State did not win, that their coach may get fired. People were upset with Ohio State at this point, even though they had won the previous game because they lost to Michigan. That was a big deal. And so this was a big game for Ohio State, and they came out absolutely stomped on Oregon 41-21. I know that's only 20 points, but the game was a lot more lopsided than what that says. Ohio State just stomped them. And Oregon, again, even though they were ranked number one most of the year, had not played the caliber of Ohio State. It was very obvious that they hadn't. And the same thing happened with the next game, Penn State and Boise State. Boise State had been in the top five most of the season, and Penn State had been in the top 10 most of the season, and they just came out and stomped them. Penn State won 31-14. There was a lot of talk at this point that Penn State was going to be the number one. At this point, people really thought that. Um, Notre Dame came out and played Georgia, and Georgia was definitely the favorite to even possibly win the whole thing. And that was a very tight game. The score might not look as tight as what it was, but Notre Dame and
Hmm.
Georgia 23-10. Notre Dame did win that game.
And after the game, the Georgia quarterback transferred out of there.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did, which was a very debatable thing. Um, you know, I'll wait till we get to pros about that. What I'm going to say there. But yeah, yeah. There's a lot of talk about. I'll go ahead and say it here. There's a lot of talk about thinking about trading, thinking about transferring, thinking about all
Hmm.
that. How is that affecting the game? Are you playing at your best, or are you thinking about your trade? Are you thinking about where you're headed? Are you thinking
Hmm.
about that? I'm going to be out of here anyway. So what's this game really mean? That's huge. That's a huge deal, and not just from the player's point of view, but now it's even being brought up from the coach's point of view, because coaches are moving on too. And is it affecting the way they're playing and the way they're coaching? And it's something to think about. I mean, should they wait until after playoffs and after these things to actually talk about negotiations and where they're going and what they're doing? It's probably not a bad idea just to give people the time that they need to concentrate on the team and the game
Right.
that they're in instead of thinking about where they're going next. All right, so then that brings us down to the semifinals. We're down to four teams at this point, and it's Texas and Ohio State and Penn State and Notre Dame. And Texas and Ohio State game, very tight game all the way through. It ended up 28-14. Ohio State won. Again, I know that score sounds like it was a lopsided game, but it was tighter than what it looks there. But the other game was even tighter than that. The Penn State Notre Dame game, wow! I mean, it came down to the last few plays. Notre Dame won 27-24, a very good game. Um, so then that made the final to be Ohio State and Notre Dame. And seed wise, what's neat about it is you're talking about a number 7 and a number 8 seed.
Hmm.
So why that's neat is because you did this 12 team thing and no top 5 team made it to the final. So
No
they
top
did.
6 team made it to the final.
Yeah, yeah, you can even go that far. So what that says to me then is that they succeeded in allowing teams that are a little bit less to actually have a chance. So they did succeed in that. Did they succeed in everything that they wanted with the 12? I don't think they did. I don't know how they're going to fix the like 10, 11, 12 bracket. That's where they really hurt. How do you figure out the 10, 11, 12 bracket? I don't know how you fix that.
You add more teams.
Yeah. Well, again,
The whole
no matter
top
how many teams
25, that's the playoffs.
what is it?
The whole top 25.
Yeah, 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 right.
Only the one seed gets a bye.
Well,
That's it.
we would still be playing college football if we did that. But but I just like that it ended up a number 7 and a number 8 seed. I think that really proves that it
Hmm.
did do what it needed to do as
Right.
far as ranking out those top 5, top 6 teams. I like that. The,
Well, I
the,
mean,
the-
you could go even further into that and say only one top 5 team made it to the semifinals.
that's exactly right.
And that
That's
was the
exactly right.
number 5 team.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, this also brings up that debate, which is always heavy in college sports, of the strength of schedule.
Hmm.
And that's not a talk in pro, but it is in college. And so, is this seventh and eighth ranked? Are they playing a tougher schedule than some of the teams above them? And that's worth talking about. I mean, I that's not a slam against
Hmm.
Oregon. There's only so many good teams out west in the first place, but it is a major compliment to the Midwest. Um, it's a major compliment to the East, and so it's just something that needs to be talked about, and it is going to be talked about with this top 12 thing. Is this strength of schedule? Because if you go by just how many wins and losses, there are teams that had records as good as Ohio State and Notre Dame that weren't even in the 12 team thing. So you can't go by just what their record is. You have to go by. You have to go by strength of schedule some. You have to. There's no choice, or you'll end up with a top 25 and then some. You'll end up with close to 30 teams that deserve to be in playoffs. And so it is a complicated, it really is. It's a very complicated thing when you have this many teams available.
Hmm.
There's no other, well, the only other sport that comes close would be college basketball, of having so many teams available. And
Well, doesn't the NBA do 16 team playoffs?
well, I was going to say basketball in general would have it. Another reason why hockey does so many is because they have the same issue. Um, but baseball, you play so many games that it eliminates, for one, against each other. You would think that basketball would eliminate because they play so many against each other. But basketball has always had, and it's not just the March Madness. I mean, they do that at the college level, but even at NBA level, they've always had a unique way to just bleed out the losers. And I don't know how they do it so good, but they really do.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not sure why. I maybe it's because of how many games they can play per week compared to other sports.
Hmm.
Basketball can play more games per week. I mean, that's one of the disadvantages of football is that you can only play one game per week. That really
Right.
hurts. Um, so I, I I don't know how to fix this. I'm not sure that there is a fix for it. Because you can't extend the you can't you really can't extend anything
Unless you
because
take away
it
from
is
the
a
regular
cold weather
season.
sport. You don't want to play it in the midst of heat.
Right, but you
Um,
could take away from the regular season.
yeah, yeah, you could. I do think that one thing that they need to do, and I think it needs to be considered, is some of these nonsense games where Ohio State plays like South Florida. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, what's the point of a game like that? There's just no sense in it. It's like this is stupid.
I mean, it
You
would be fun for South Florida fans to see, like, a good ranked team because their
And
team's not
that's
going to
what
be
they
ranked.
that's part of the reckoning of it, is that, they get to travel and they get to see different things, But for crying out loud, I mean, it's not even a game. It's like, come on. And those are the games that end up the 60-7, and it looks good on a record, but it's like, are you serious right now? I mean, it's not even a game, you know.
Right.
And so I those are the waste of weeks though. When you're only playing one game per week, you can't waste too many games, is the point.
Right.
You've got to really make them worth something, and I think that's the problem with with wasting a week worth of schedule like that.
Mhm.
So anyway, um, so I really I'm not against I'm not against them having a weak team occasionally. I don't know that that's wrong. Um, but I don't know that it needs to be as weak as like an Ohio State against South Florida, and you'd be shocked how much that really does happen at the beginning of
Right.
the year, and it's almost like a practice game. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, this is a joke.
Well, to
Um,
be fair, South Florida did get a bowl game.
yeah, I know that. I was just playing
FAU
there.
didn't.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I was just playing with the
Yeah.
team here. I mean, it didn't matter who I said, but
Yeah,
um,
I know, I know.
all right. Well, I think that's enough there. My personal opinion, I'm not a Notre Dame fan. Um, so I was thrilled that Ohio State won, but I'm also not a Ohio State fan. Excuse me, Ohio State fan. So I can't say that I was overjoyed that they won. But it was one of those games. I don't know that I watched a second of it. And I'm serious about that. I'm not sure that I did. It just wasn't something that I cared about, and
Mm.
and I know that sounds sad, but I'm serious. I
Well,
didn't
we've
care.
only been talking 30 minutes about college football, and now you're saying you don't care about it. So, it's fine.
No,
It's
I meant the final is what I meant. No, 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 no. I
fine.
do care for college football. I meant the final. All right, now let's switch over to NFL
Okay.
and talk just a few minutes
Oh, wait.
about
Are
NFL.
we first going to talk about the Heisman?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We can do that.
So, the
Um,
Heisman winner came from Colorado. He played both wide receiver and cornerback. He was on offense and defense. Travis Hunter,
yes,
winner of the 2024 Heisman Trophy.
yes. And I wish I could tell you that Heisman trophies have always turned out to be a great NFL player, but that is not true.
Born in West
Um,
Palm Beach.
oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
that's interesting. Um, Unfortunately, it has not always turned out that they turn out to be a great player. I don't know why. I can't answer all of that, why it doesn't turn out better, but it doesn't always turn out as good as what it should. And I don't understand that to this day. You would think it would turn out better, but it doesn't always. Um,
You have people like Johnny Manziel, who won the Heisman, and he came to the NFL and did nothing.
right. That's what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
just I don't understand why some do well and others come and just absolutely choke from the very beginning. They just never make anything of themselves. All right, I want to go back through an NFL and just bring us back to speed to know where we're at and where we've come to. So I'm going to go clear back to the playoff bracket and bring us to the wild card all the way in. And I'll start on the AFC side. Um, so the AFC side, of course, we know now that Kansas City will be there, and they've got the chance to make a record of being a three-peat um, uh, Super Bowl winner, which is an amazing feat. It really, really is. I mean, there's no doubt whether you like Kansas City or not, that's an amazing feat to happen. It's never happened in pro football, and so if it happens, it's an amazing thing. Um, now, the wild card week goes back to January 11th through the 13th, and I think we've already talked about these games a little bit, so I'm not going to talk much about them. The Chiefs had a bye, and then the Texans and the Chargers played. That game ended up the Texans winning 32-12. The Ravens and the Steelers played. That ended up 28-14. And the Bills and the Broncos played. That ended up 31-7. Then that takes them into the divisional, which is January 18 to 19. and there the Chiefs do play, and the Chiefs played the Texans. One thing that has been interesting to watch the Chiefs as they come along is that they keep playing very close games,
Yeah.
and that's a little scary. Um, but it's played off for them. I mean, I'm not going to say it hasn't worked for them, but it's really if you're their fan, it's scary. If you're a football fan, it's awesome to watch because
Right.
it's sort of like a chess game. And they really keep these games close. So for instance, in the divisional game, Chiefs and Texans, they won 23-14. In the conference championship against the Bills, they won 32-29. They kept both of those games very close, even down to the wire. And like I said, if you're a Chiefs fan, you're just biting your knuckles the whole time. It's like, oh man, are we going to win? But if you're a football fan, it's like, wow, this is some strategy playing. And Andy Reid, the coach, that's the kind of game he likes. He likes that, I'm going to outplay you. I'm going to
Hmm.
outthink you.
Yeah.
I'm going to out strategize you. So I I like it. I think that he's one of my favorite coaches. He's amazing. But it's a scary way to play, and it
Yeah.
can catch up to you eventually. And we'll talk about the final here in just a minute, the Super Bowl. Of course, the game that absolutely crushes my heart is the Bills and the Ravens. The Bills ended up winning 27-25, and I just want to mention the Andrews missed catch. It was terrible. I mean, but I will say that both of the games of Chiefs Bills, matter of fact, all three of these games, Chiefs Texans, Chiefs Bills, Bills Ravens, all of those came down to some weather stuff. It was cold. Those games were miserably cold. Um, they weren't easy on anybody. But I mean, no matter which team you were, and Andrews is still a fantastic wide receiver. Um, 9 out of 10 times he's going to catch that ball.
You mean tight
And
end?
what?
You
Oh,
mean
tight
tight
end. I'm
end?
sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Tight end. Yeah, I knew that. Um,
Are
but
you
anyway,
sure you knew that? Didn't sound
I'm
like it.
positive I did. Yeah. Uh, but anyway, I really, I hate that it came down to one player. I hate that it came down to a player that's been a really good player all year. Um, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bills Mafia. That's what they
Yeah.
call themselves. The
Who?
Bills
What
Mafia.
football fan hasn't heard of the Bills Mafia?
Yeah, really. The Bills Mafia literally started donating money to to, to organizations in the name of Andrews. Uh, um, I mean, that's just them.
Uh,
They're just that mean, and it's like, man, that is cruel, But anyway, I mean, it's fun in some ways, but it's also just meanness. It's like, ah, man, that hurts. So anyway, so yeah, it's just an interesting thing that happened. And like I said, somehow the Ravens have found a way to lose in the playoffs time after time after time. I will say, as a Baltimore fan, it is neat that both the Ravens and the Orioles made it to the postseason this year. I'm thrilled with that. So I will hold on to that. So anyway, enough of that. Let's go over to the NFC side. The NFC side, the team that had a bye was the Lions, and the teams for the wild card, the Rams played the Vikings. This is a game that should have been much, much closer. And the Rams, this was coming off of the fires going crazy in LA. They weren't able to play where they wanted to play, and they played in Arizona or wherever it was, LA or Las Vegas. I mean, I don't remember where it was, but anyway, 27-9, LA Rams won. Um, this was when the Commanders, who were 6 seed, beating the Buccaneers 23-20, and everybody's like, "Wow, Cinderella team, here they come! This rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, what an amazing story!" And they were really looking awesome. And then the Eagles and the Packers, um, they didn't stomp them. 22-10. They're lucky they came away just that. Eagles played a lot better than what that score looks. 22-10. The divisional, um, absolute shocker of shockers
Yes.
when the Commanders beat the Lions. Nobody expected that in any kind of way.
Mm,
Nobody knew what to do with it. It was like, what just happened? And so nobody knew where to put the Commanders at that point. Are they going to go all the way? What's going to happen here? What can we expect from here? And so it was like, whoa, okay, Commanders are for real.
yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
Eagles and the Rams, very close, tight game. Again, a very cold game, and the Eagles ended up winning 28-22,
The
and it
the
was a great
the
game.
the LA Fires didn't light that fire underneath the Rams like I was expecting them to.
Yeah, yeah, that game had potential of both of those teams winning, and it just, yeah, it
I
just
do want to say that earlier in the year, I do have to apologize for this. Earlier in the season, I was like, wow, the Lions seem to really have won that trade back those years ago for with Goff and
uh-huh.
Stafford. Like, I was just looking at where they were right now, and right now, like they both lost in the divisional round.
I know. I That was a shocker. Nobody expected the Lions. Once that game was done, everybody was like, "Now who wins the
What
Super
what what
Bowl?"
do we do now?
Yeah, I mean, everybody was just dumbfounded. They were like, "What?
Yeah,
What? What just happened?" And that's a six seed winning a number one seed, and everybody was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! Now what's going to happen?"
yeah,
And then the very next week for the conference championship, the Eagles absolutely stomped down the Commanders. I mean, 55-23, and it was just a running machine. I mean, Barkley just came alive. And so, okay, that brings us to the Super Bowl of Kansas City against Philadelphia. Okay, Kansas City is favored, and they should be.
yeah,
It's being played in New Orleans, so there's no such thing as home field advantage for either one of them here. Um, they do know how to play any team. They do know how to come up to whatever ranking the team plays. Here's the thing, okay? Kansas City has a decent defense. They do indeed. Um, but offense, they're almost all passing.
yeah.
Um, they can run, but they don't. They are almost all passing. The only running they do is Patrick Mahomes. He can run. He has legs himself, but the rest of them don't, for the most part. I'm not saying they never run. Don't get me wrong, but that they're known for their passing. And so you're going to have a passing team against an Eagles that predominantly run, and I mean run down the middle of the field, run down wherever they want to run. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Have they been stopped at all?
No,
Yeah.
no.
um yeah, it's
I
definitely a passing heavy versus a run heavy Super Bowl this year.
typically typically a running team wins, typically. But in the Super Bowl, it can be totally different
Yeah.
because the big plays is what matters in the Super Bowl. And also, not strength of schedule as much as um, relaxation in the big game.
Right.
And there's no doubt about it, Kansas City has the players that have been there compared to Philadelphia. Even though Philadelphia, this matchup was just 2 or 3 years ago, same exact matchup. Um, so I'm not saying that Philly doesn't have any, but not to the comparison that Kansas City does. By the way, another interesting fact is I think it's still true. It would have to be. Andy Reid has the most wins ever by a Philadelphia coach.
I think that's accurate. I think I remember hearing that.
And so, I mean, Andy Reid not only knows football, he knows Philadelphia football. And he does know running football. That's the funny part. He's not just a passing coach. He knows how to run a football. And
Hmm.
so if it comes down to coaching, Andy Reid's going to win. If it comes down to what typically happens in football, the Eagles should win because running should beat passing. But again, as far as relaxation, I'm a I'm a little scared of Barkley. Barkley is still new enough that I'm a little scared he might not be able to to handle this big game.
Well, you also have to remember Saquon before this year was a New York Giant.
I know that. That's what
He
I
hasn't
mean.
had many big games yet.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. I
Yeah.
mean, he did good against the Commanders. Don't get me wrong. He
Oh, he was
blew them apart.
fantastic.
But that's not the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay.
Right.
I mean, there's a far cry from the Commanders and the Kansas City Chiefs. And so I'm worried for them. They definitely they have a big hurdle right here. Um, and they weren't tested by the Packers. They weren't tested by the Commanders. It'd be very interesting. They were tested by LA and almost got beat. And so that's why I'm worried because Kansas City's definitely a jump up from LA.
Oh
And
yeah.
so that's why I'm worried that I'm not sure. It's going to be very tough. By the way, I may be mistaken here, but I think that Chiefs Bills game is the first time they scored over 30 points this year. I think. I think that's right.
I could look at that real quick, but I did just want to say. So there is this baseball podcast I listen to. It's called Talking Baseball. And back at baseball playoff time, they were talking about what they thought the Astros were going to do. Because they've been on this amazing 7-year run of making the playoffs and making the ALCS like almost every year. And they said it's the Astros until it's not.
Wow.
Well, I mean, yes, I agree with that. I agreed with that, and it turned out it was not. They got knocked out in the first round. But here in football sense, in the NFL, over these recent years, it's Kansas City until it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, I just read I just saw something about how many years in a row now it's either been Brady or Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and it's crazy. It's like you got to be kidding me. I mean, it's a lot. Or maybe it was just the playoffs. Either way, it's an amazing amount. I was like, "Whoa." Excuse me. But yeah, I'm almost sure they have not scored. I might be wrong with 30. Maybe it was
Let's see.
40
There's
this time.
29, 27. They scored 30 against the Panthers, so I don't know if that really counts. Oh, 30 against the Buccaneers as well.
All right, it must be 40 that they hadn't scored then.
Well, I can tell you this. The game against the Bills, they scored 32 points. That is the most they've scored all season.
That's the most they scored.
That's the most they've scored all season.
Okay, okay,
They had 2 games where they scored 30.
okay. I knew they were low in the scoring this year.
Yeah, but it hasn't mattered.
No, no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they've kept it close every time. I mean, like I said, 23-14, they could have stomped Texans, and that's the thing that's so odd about them is that they have the potential to stomp it, but they just don't do it. And I'm not against that kind of playing. I mean, play up to the level of the team, but boy, it's just a risky way to play. It's I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It's just risky, but
Well,
hey, it's done them good. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think Kansas City's gonna win it.
I
But
do
what?
too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I mean, if I was putting money down, I'm going with Kansas City,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I would
Um,
too. Doesn't mean I'm rooting for Kansas City,
right, right, exactly.
but
That's
they're
exactly right.
probably gonna be the ones to take it.
Right, right. And the other thing is, everything in me would have loved to seen an upset on both sides, and ended up with a Bills Commanders thing. That would have been
I
so
thought
cool.
Washington going into the game. I thought Washington and Jaden Daniels was gonna bring the upset.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, I did too. I was like, man, I mean, the way they just played, they got a good chance. But
Yeah, with the
Eagles
way the
Eagles offense is very tough. Eagles offense, I would venture to say that Eagles offense is better than Kansas City's offense.
but they don't have Patrick Mahomes.
I know that. I know that.
Quarter,
But
the
see,
heart and soul of the team is the quarterback.
I'm a running offense guy. I like running. I think it makes
Hmm.
for a better game. It definitely opens up the game that you can do more. So I'm a running guy. I like to
Hmm.
see running.
Yeah,
Passing is extremely dangerous. Passing, it's fun. I mean, for a fan, fun's
yeah.
they love it. I mean, who doesn't like to see a
Hmm.
20-yard pass? But I'd much rather see a 20-yard burst. Oh, it's so much fun to watch that guy just take off, and it's like, oh man, look at him go. So,
You heard
all
it here
right,
first. Kansas City win the
yep.
Super Bowl. All right, this has been the Grounds Crew college and NFL update. Please like, subscribe, comment. We are no longer on TikTok because TikTok got banned.
Yeah.
But we are on Instagram. So like, subscribe, follow on Instagram, YouTube, all that. Give us your questions, and we will see if we can fit it into an episode. This has been the Grounds Crew signing off. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Have a good night.